thoughts and opinions expressed are the speaker's own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of Phi Labs or the Archway protocol. The material and information presented here is for general information purposes only.
Welcome back to the Archway Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Weissman, joined today with the product manager of Area 52, Adam Kecskes. Adam, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Eric. We're really looking forward to this.
So I am super overjoyed and stoked about Area 52. I've been messing with it, and I'm personally not a developer, and I really want to get into it, and it seems like the fun way to get me started. But before we get into the fun, beautiful UI learning toolkit that is Area 52, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself, Adam?
Yeah. So my name is Adam Kecskes, obviously, that was stated. I am the product manager here at Phi Labs. I manage not just Area 52, but some of the other development software that we're working on. I've been in the tech industry for almost 25 years, actually a little over 25 years now I think about it. Started out in customer service, ended up in software development. I was a C and C++ developer for mobile phones for a long time. I have a background in a combination background of degrees in mathematics, computer science, and English. I ended up, though, in project management for a very long period of time. And part of that project management ended up also doing product management. And I ended up getting involved with user experience development, information architecture, various domains in that kind of space, web development. And that evolved me into being a product manager as well. And so I just recently joined Phi Labs. So that's who I am.
Awesome. And what got you into crypto?
What got me into crypto really was the blockchain itself, right? So I'm a software developer. I started out in C and C++, and the blockchain kind of has this interesting, rudimentary technology that really holds a lot of promise, I see. Not just in this kind of financial way that we often see with crypto, but like in terms of like contracts and stuff. I actually was a real estate agent for a while. And I was involved, with doing contracts, and I love automating systems and having them all that. And so the idea of running real world applications on the network, as it were, on a blockchain was really appealing to me. It was an interesting and fascinating technology. And I thought it was a great way I think it's a great way of doing things, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. We automate everything, whether we realize it or not.
Right.
Being involved in so many crypto projects, I get like tons of like stock template, legal contracts all the time, and I'm like going through them with a fine tooth comb, like this is not applicable, this is outdated, and they're like, oh yeah, we just haven't updated our we automate everything, whether we realize it or not. Might as well have it be something that's easier to be auditable and less time consuming and easier to upgrade. And so it is an inevitability.
Yeah, the auditability and the transparency is also a key element that I really like. That's a big thing in my life is making sure that things are as transparent as possible, because that's the way we get business done better, is it really amounts to.
And where are you based?
I'm based in Austin, Texas.
Awesome. We have a couple ATX people out here, so that's cool. I got to go down there for a Decentral last year sometime, but that's really cool. And so you got into crypto, you like the idea of blockchain just from a technical standpoint and recognizing that it is the future. What led you to the Cosmos ecosystem and to Archway?
So when I first got into crypto, which was a few years ago, I heard about Cosmos, and I just really liked the idea of the network, an internet of blockchains, right? Like that's kind of the tagline. And in particular, this is when they were talking about IBC and getting it all set up and everything like that. And I'm old school, right? So like I used to do networking protocol work as well at Fineline. So it reminded me so much of TCP/IP that I'm like, okay, this is interesting. I didn't do much with it back then, and then just about a year and a half ago, I got a bit more into it. Actually, this is how I became involved with Area 52. Is the company I used to work for was consulted to create Area 52 initially, and of course that brought me back into Cosmos in a more direct way, and in particular with Cosm-Wasm and writing the smart contracts.
Okay, and what's your take on Cosm-Wasm and Rust compared to the other languages you've worked on and a lot of the Web 2 stuff you've done?
Well, I come from an Ethereum background, right? That's the previous companies I've worked for have mainly based in Ethereum, so Solidity, and I learned some Solidity, and I liked it well enough because it has that JavaScript-esque type of feel to it, right? And I was never a primary contract developer, but all of my contract developers that I worked with, always, even as good as they were, it was just one problem after another, right? Like the audits had to be we had to really dive deep into the audits. That got expensive. That got time consuming. All of the testing that had to be done. In fact, like most of the contracts were trivial to write, but like took forever to test, to write the tests for and everything like that. And so with Cosm-Wasm, right, that just the fact that you can write everything in Rust is amazing, right? Just because it's a fundamentally more robust language than Solidity is. That's just what it comes down to. And the fact that it's, one is it's more robust, memory safe, all the standard features that they talk about with Rust. But on top of that, what makes Rust nice is that you have a larger audience around it, right? Like Solidity is despite it being JavaScript-like, you still have to learn it, right? Whereas if you learn Rust, not only do you learn Rust and make it applicable to Cosm-Wasm, but it can be applicable to so many other places. The Solidity is just for Ethereum, right? It's useless outside of Ethereum, as far as I'm aware. Rust, it's been around for a while and it's growing in popularity. And personally, after my usage of it, I really love it. So I think it's a fantastic decision on the part of the Cosm-Wasm team to start with Rust. It was just a really good idea.
I think 5 years running as the #1 language on Stack Overflow. Solidity's not really going to go anywhere. It's not precise enough, and it is so different that it's you really only use it to build on Ethereum. And if the world grows to be not just Ethereum, and if you grow to do stuff that's Web 2 or Web 3 or anything else in development, Rust is going to be incredibly useful to learn. So let's talk about Area 52. Like, what does it solve? What need is there right now that exists that Area 52 is going to make better?
So in any given ecosystem, right, there's always a lacking. There's often, I should say, a lacking of documentation, right? And so you have people who are eager to get involved, especially when it comes into the blockchain and crypto space, right? Like there's always eagerness for people to get, developers to come in to write the next big dApp and make their mark on the world in this kind of Wild West environment we have. And it doesn't have to be Wild West environment, we just happen to be in kind of one, right? And so I've always been keen on the idea of educating people, right? And so typically when there's a platform or a service or something like that, there's documentation, but it's always on websites. And, it's always just standard, read it and hope that the details are right. So, in the case of be it Solidity or Rust or whatever kind of thing, I always find it helpful to have additional points of view when it comes to educating. And so for beginners in particular, right, this type of system where you go in, it's a Udemy type of thing, you go in, you step by step, somebody's leading you the way, you get to see kind of semi hands-on, because it's not really hands-on, right? You get a taste for the hands-on. There's just a nice place for that in the environment. And we have a lot of people. I talked to a few people who used it actively. I didn't know who they were. They just came up to me. We started talking about it, and they've really gotten a lot of value out of it, which that heartens me a lot, right? Because I've done a lot of work on it. And so back to more directly to your question, what Area 52 solves is it solves a couple of things, right? So it solves that kind of beginner to intermediate education program, and on top of that, it also offers an alternative documentation source, right? Because when the developers and or tech writers are writing documentation for their websites, they're not necessarily thinking about it in an educational kind of way. And so applications like Area 52 offer that perspective. And it, like if you look at Area 52, like I just recently wrote a course on it, like I expand greatly on little nuances that don't show up in the documentation. You have to dig into the code to look at it and find that. So that's another place where these happen.
And you do it in a fun, gamified way. I'm going over the website right now. It truly is beautiful. I did a couple lessons on crypto zombies back in 2017. It was fantastic. It's gamified. It's like, oh, I'm just trying to build this zombie or whatnot. But in the meantime, it's teaching you how to code. And so it's a lot easier than I've helped some developers that transition from say Solidity or other languages to Rust because they wanted to get into smart contract development in Cosmos before. And Figment has a helpful course, but it's decently outdated. At least last time we had some people use it. And then it's that plus give them the workbook on Rust, and it's just super, super boring. And it's hard to get through that. The information's there, it's available, but it's not even if you're just learning Rust from the actual book, then it's not Cosm-Wasm. So the barrier of entry is just a little bit high educationally. And you want to just get to actually writing the code, actually building the dApp that you're there for, not just going through all this boring, busy work to do the education without the hands-on help. So this really will help.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's I think there's kind of an important point there about the boringness of stuff. Like now with Area 52, you do go step by step through things. It's not that much different in that regard. But two things happen in this environment, right? One is it contextualizes it. So you're writing an application, right? And it's more direct in that you can kind of see the results. And then on top of that, what we're writing is not, we want to make it fun and silly, right? And show you that like you can have a different point of view about this, right? And so it's not just your typical like I'm writing an increment program, right? Or I'm writing a to-do list. It's like no, you're actually writing this is not practical because there's no such thing as like a jump ring, right? Like there's a science fiction conceit behind it, obviously, right? But you're writing the thing. And you're like, oh, and it gets you excited. Like, okay, well, if I write this next line of code, where does that lead me, right? Like, what is the ultimate result for this, And so, and I like the idea of that it's abstracted, that it's creating something that's not a real world thing, because it's like, okay, well, one, it forces me as both a developer and product manager to think, okay, well, what am I training exactly, right? Because if I'm going to abstract it to something that's not real, it still needs to be meaningful and useful. But then on top of that, then it also forces the reader, the student, to think, okay, I can do it this way. Well, or in the real world, I think I might do it this way as well, right? Take a different take on it. So.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and that definitely makes it like better than other competitive courses in that it is fun, it is gamified, the information is all there. Plus, as you mentioned, extra notes that aren't in the current documentation that will be beneficial to people that do want to be hands-on, that aren't just like doing this for a fun game, but are doing this as a step to get to where they can be contract developers, building their own dApps, or getting hired by teams in the Cosmos ecosystem. So that really is great. What level of experience is required? What does somebody need to know to go and start this first course? And I know we've got 3 other courses coming out really soon.
Yeah, the assumption we're making with our audience is that they are JavaScript developers. They've done web development, kind of at that level, right? So something. I was about to use the word rudimentary, but like JavaScript is so commonly used, right? Most people are familiar with it in some form or another. So we assume some basic level of programming, so we don't, we're not going to go over control structures and stuff like that. We also assume some degree of Rust knowledge, just at a you're not coming to it absolutely fresh. So there is that. Our focus is Cosm-Wasm, right? We want to teach people how Cosm-Wasm works. Now, a big part of Cosm-Wasm happens to be Rust. And when I was going through the content, I wasn't assuming anything because, I've been there. I've had to learn. And so when I encountered something kind of more esoteric, more Rust-centric, like Unwrap, for example, right? So there's a few places where we use Unwrap, and that's not something you would use in production code, but a lot of people would encounter in a tutorial, an informational type of way like this. And so I spend a moment to talk about Unwrap and explore it a little deeper. So there are plenty of places like that. And I also try to point links to the Rust documentation as well. Like in the latest course, when it comes out, it talks about impl, for example, right? It's I assume what an implementation is, from Rust. But in the context that this arises, I thought it made sense to explore it a little bit more. So if you will learn a little bit of Rust, you will grow your Rust, I should say, a little bit more as you get into it. But I assume the basics of programming.
And how much does it cost for a new user to come and start doing these programs, these courses?
Totally free. It's free in terms of you can just get started. It's email free if you want to save your information, right? So the idea is that you move through and you can start to see your progression, and if you step away, you'll remember where you are. And as we advance the project, right, because it's relatively new, we haven't featured it out as much as we'd like to, but as we explore it a bit more and really gamify it, then we'll want to be able to track that information. So that's through your email address at this point.
And this is awesome. This is wonderful. It's a good and service that you guys are building for the entire Cosmos ecosystem and really beyond. People that Cosm-Wasm will continue to expand, and it's the program will continue to expand and offer more and more courses. So that really is fantastic. And that's kind of the ethos of Archway as a whole, is being the arch into the Cosmos ecosystem, being the access point, the gateway where people can dive in from, like, where do you start? You start at Archway, an easy layer 1 platform. If you want to build a dApp, you'll immediately get rewards without having to set up your own validator set or whatnot. It really is going to be kind of that access point. At least that's how we envision it for the entire Cosmos ecosystem. And so if you want to go build an app on Injective, or there's something special you want to do on a different network as well, but you're still new to this Cosm-Wasm stuff, you still come here, and Archway is providing the opportunity for you to build out in the entire rest of the Cosmos ecosystem. Not like you have to now build it on Archway, but it will also teach you how to do that.
Yeah, no, that's one of the things I really like about working. Well, I work for Phi Labs, right? But we support the Archway, ecosystem of blockchain, and so just both within Phi Labs and then philosophically speaking, the wider Archway community is along those lines, right? And so and the whole goal of us is to reward the developers, and that was a big appeal for me when I was talking to joining the company. It's like, oh, I'm a developer. I like to be rewarded. And so, I think that's important.
Yeah. A lot of what we've seen in crypto is like in previous Web 2 stuff, and a lot of the developers are the ones that built all the projects, and then it's the salesmen that make all the money at their expense. And that's something that I've seen Do Kwon mention about. That's been flipped a lot in crypto, which is great. But even then, it's the idea, the Fat Protocol thesis, like, it's tough to come in and build something for yourself. It's always building stuff for other people, and Archway is making that better, and they're providing even the framework here with Area 52 to make that easily accessible. So I do love building for builders. Being that you work with Phi Labs, what are your thoughts with the team? What's it been like? How long have you been here?
I have been here just a little over 3 months. I worked with the company earlier, like as I mentioned. Phi Labs hired my previous company to create Archway, so I was already familiar with some of the staff on hand, and was one of my huge motivations for joining. I really loved Griffin, who's the CEO of the company. He's just great to work with, and Mike, who's biz dev, and then I got to meet a lot of these people in person at a recent event, and just everybody's really delightful and friendly, and the eagerness, and that's there, right? They're excited about the product and the project and the blockchain and the ecosystem and everything around it, and that's kind of enticing and addicting. And so it's great to be around people that are. We are in the infancy of the project, but there's definitely a buzz around it, both internally and externally, right? Of like, hey, what this could really be a game changer. This is new. This is different. This is exciting. So what are your thoughts on the vision of Phi Labs and what they want to do with Archway, what they want to do with Area 52? Where do you see this progressing? Well, Phi Labs in general, I'll leave that to the CEO to talk about. Obviously, our goal is to support Archway as much as we can, as best we can, and of course, my particular contribution, which is semi-direct via Area 52. What I want to do with Area 52 ultimately is grow it in terms of being a really robust educational and fun educational platform. That's the big thing. Like most educational platforms are very boring, and like you go to Udemy and like you can find the occasional good instructor, but it's kind of hit or miss. I'd like to create something that's consistently fun, consistently engaging. And, we talked a little bit about like what level you need to be, right? I want to approach it from many different levels so that, you can start as a beginner. Like we're actually talking about doing a Rust module, for example, right? So where we teach people the beginnings of Rust as well. So even if you're not even a blockchain enthusiast or crypto enthusiast, you might still come to it, right? Like that's one idea. But to expand on that, like it's very rudimentary right now. It's not as gamified as I'd like it to be. But we want to add quizzes in there so that you can double check your work. We'd like to add in videos, right? So it's somebody actually can direct you a little more. We'd like to improve the help system. One of the things is improving just the general UX for it. Right now, it's pretty it works, it's fundamental and everything like that, but we need to do a little more exploration and see how people are using it and how they want to use it better. Just in my own experience of using it, and I developed it, right? I can see, I can definitely see places where we could improve that. And one of the places is in the help, right? Is providing that as an alternative documentation system. And and then on that, just go while I'm thinking about it, this is a recent item we put in to our backlog, is the idea of indexing some of this information and then representing it, right? So yes, you go through the process of learning things step by step, creating the various contracts that you will create and everything like that. But in order to supplement not just your exercises, but the wider Cosmos ecosystem, indexing this information in such a way that you can then cross-reference it and like I said, get this alternate point of view, right? Because the source material is not necessarily complete. We're offering different perspective. We kind of want to create a space in between that is an alternate way of finding information about Cosm-Wasm and how it works and all of that kind of stuff. So
awesome. So you mentioned quizzes and videos and whatnot. Any plans on making it a full-on DApp or adding NFTs or anything else?
Right. Yeah. So obviously, being on Archway, or being even though it's not necessarily geared specifically towards Archway, this is for learning any sort of Cosm-Wasm, right? But one of our ideas is to let you create contracts that, as you move along, right, create actually NFTs. There's various ways you can do it, but in the grand scheme of things, the idea would be is that as you progress along, you get an NFT out of it, right? So the work you do is being tracked, and somehow in the metadata we uniquely identify you. We create a picture of the alien or the cat or some other creature, something like that, that's unique to you, or mostly unique to you. You get to name it or whatever, that kind of thing, and that would become a visual NFT that you could then share across social media, use as a profile ID or whatever, that kind of thing. So if we did something that was kind of blockchain oriented, it would probably be in that direction, in that regard. So yeah, I mean, obviously that's pretty complicated. It's an educational program, and it's like, how do you monetize that to some degree?
That'll be so cool, though.
What are the economics around an Archway, or sorry, Area 52 NFT? What are the economics around that? So,
hey, that'll be cool. We'll figure it out. I do some economic stuff. I'd be happy to get involved more.
Yeah, exactly. That's I was exactly thinking. So we'll leave it in your capable hands to determine the tokenomics of the Area 52 NFT token.
Awesome. Could this platform eventually scale out to include, first off, so that other builders, like kind of open source, can contribute to make this protocol grow, and secondly, to include courses on things that aren't necessarily contract development? Like, how far can this scale? What's the vision of Area 52 specifically? Yeah,
I think the short term scale is definitely just keeping it on the Cosmos blockchain. Definitely letting other blockchains contribute to it in various ways. Instead of them necessarily creating separate educational platforms, they can just come to Area 52, create their own course set, everything like that. We'd have to restructure a few things, but that's nothing that's out of hand. It'd be easy enough to do. I have a vision for, and this is my personal vision from having been an educator in the past on various things, both a technical and a public speaking educator. I would love to create it as a platform, as a SaaS, right? So where it really stands out. Now that really separates itself distinctly from the blockchain environment. So it's that would be very dependent on who's interested in the work and all that kind of stuff. That's just kind of my personal vision, is that notion. It'd be fantastic to do that. We have put so much work into it, and there's going to be so much more work put into it. It would be interesting to expand it to that degree. Yeah, that's the thing. It's an open platform. We could do so much for it, right? So it could turn into anything, really.
So right now it's a Udemy course, but eventually it could be Udemy.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, each of those courses, Teachable, Udemy, whatever, right. They all were created because there was a lacking of something in some other platform, or that platform simply didn't exist, right? Like the educational environment didn't exist at one point, right? So they came along, and the reason you have all of these, what's the other one? Point Teach, or whatever the other one is. It's several that are, that Udemy likes, but you have a different user experience with them. You have different results from them. You have different educators who come in, right? So, you could do the same thing here.
So before we wrap up, what is one lasting piece of information or one last call to action you would like to give the audience or like them to take away from this?
I think the obvious one is go to Area 52. Go and experience it. Here's the thing with Area 52, right? There's a little story that's evolving over the time. There's lots of little flavor text in over that. And I would love to share that with people and have you come in, learn a bit of Rust, learn a lot of Cosm-Wasm, and learn what's happening with this little story that we're creating over time. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited about the next courses are coming up and the developing and ongoing saga that we're developing.
I'm excited to try it out. I've been looking at the website here. The first course is 6 hours long. I haven't gotten to dive into it yet, but I'm hoping after this, I finish up a couple projects I'm working on right now. I can take a weekend and get through it. It's going to be fun.
Fantastic.
And then, Adam, how can people reach out to you directly if they're interested in Area 52? They've got some questions, comments, concerns, want to help get involved with it. How can they reach you?
They can reach out to me through email. It's probably the best way. I don't have a large social media presence. I'm on LinkedIn as well, so that's another place to reach out. So it's adam.kecskes. That's my last name is Kecskes. And at philabs.xyz. So that's email is the best way to reach out to me. But I also take LinkedIn too. So if you look me up on LinkedIn, it's bald guy with a beard. You'll find me.
Awesome. Adam, thank you very much for joining the show. Excited for the new courses coming with Area 52 and to dive into it, and love all the gamification and looking forward to seeing where it goes. I know just from the biz dev side, talking to lots of other groups and teams, everyone else is excited for Area 52. You got Zucky Mannion shouting it out on Twitter. This is a need for all of the Cosmos, and we're providing it, and you're doing the bulk of the work, and you're doing fantastic, brother. So thank you.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun. Appreciate it. Thanks, Eric.